Well, you've seen two games now. What do you know about your team now that you didn't know when you flew back in from Portugal?
Just how committed they are to continue to improve. The mentality has been top. The understanding of how we want to the adjustments we want to make to our game model, uh, and then most important is the areas that we need to continue to improve upon. Right, and I think when you have an honest group of guys, um, I think those things from a coaching perspective become much easier. And I think I referenced this after the last game is also the leadership group. And having been an old player, sometimes it's frustrating playing with younger guys. Their ability to lead these young men and make them feel comfortable, and the acceptance of knowing that they're going to make mistakes, but yet still supporting them and putting the team first, has been a feature in our first two games.
You've talked at times over the years about team building. It looks like ownership spent some money, and it looks like there's some talent, and people are showing flashes. But what are you going to do? What's your plan as far as, instead of having 30 talented players, like making them a team and a group and uniting people
Yeah.
from everywhere?
No, I think that's a great point. I think the only way to do that is, if one, is to have everyone available, and I think that's been our biggest challenge, whether it's been visas or injuries. We haven't had the whole group together. The last time we had the majority of the guys together was against LA in our last preseason game. Since then, everyone's got different timelines of coming back. So I think the most important thing is getting everyone in the building on the field together. But the next part is, how do we still get results whilst guys like Diego and Victor and Lucas getting up to speed, Juan just getting his paperwork and playing his first game. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. The most important thing is, like, what's the foundation we can build upon? And from these last two games is defensively, I feel like we've been a much more solid team, and I think that's something that we were deliberate about in the off season. Hence, we changed our defensive shape. The other part is our attacking transition, which was non-existent last year. And I think when Morgan came on in particular, I think you saw a different type of tempo in when we regained balls and we were able to play forward. And so I think those two aspects of our game have been highlights for me tactically. And now it's just putting all the phases together. And I think, what I've seen in the first two games as well is, Luca's done a really good job in there. And it's getting him more comfortable, him and Noel really looking to dictate the game with the ball. Oftentimes we're asking our center backs to look for forward passes. So we've been deliberate yesterday and today, as to our pivot work and making sure that we're always creating either options to receive or opening up space to play forward and then receive off the next layer. And I think that's an area that we can continue to improve upon to gain control with the ball.
Atlanta lost their first two games. They're both on the road, and now you're gonna be there for their home opener. So that's different. But they've given up 3 of their 4 goals 79th minute or later. Do you talk to guys about, no matter what happens in the first 75, you got to have belief, especially against an opponent that here early in the year looks vulnerable?
Yeah, I think we'll get to that as the week goes on. Again, I think the first few days of every work week is really thinking about our performance at the weekend and how we can continue to improve upon our own game model so that there's clear understanding. And as we get closer to the weekend, we'll talk about those things. The one thing that has been also a feature of our group has been the resolve, in the emotional control. In the first game against Vancouver, we were down a goal, and we went to a man-to-man scheme late in the game to really get pressure on the ball. So the understanding was there, the application was there, but the emotional control was also present. It wasn't reckless. It was really controlled. This last game, up 2-0, conceded a goal, kept the game in front of us for the most part, didn't allow too many chances, but still created 2 or 3 really good opportunities to ice the game. So the emotional control in these two games, given different game states, has been phenomenal, given our, the integration of some of these younger players.
You said before the Vancouver game that Aiden had game, and you were hoping that he would just relax and go do his thing and show it. Between the finish for the goal in the second game and what we just saw on the end line when he was 1v1 with a veteran defender, is that some of the stuff you were talking about? And is there even more than that?
Yeah, no, I think Aiden is a really, he's a technical, dynamic. He is an attacking weapon. And I think, again, when we talk about development, oftentimes everyone wants like a timeline. And it's when their self-belief is commensurate with the self-belief of everyone else around them, right? And it's only then do you really see the best stuff. And so I think Aiden has had some really good performances. I think we have yet to see the best of Aiden Herzakani.
Thanks. David. You talked about the emotional control of these young guys. What does it say about these young guys that they're able to, kind of be flatline, be even too?
Yeah, again, I think it's really, I think the coaches do a great job of creating an environment that is safe. You talk about psychological safety in the workplace, that extends itself to professional sports. And if young players don't feel safe to make mistakes, they're going to be emotionally erratic. But when they know that they've got the backing of their coaches, of their experienced teammates, it allows them to stay even. And there's no, and you see, after they make mistakes, there's no one throwing their hands up in the air and yelling at them. Everyone gets on with it. There's a next play mentality within our group, and I think that allows for the younger players to feel comfortable, to stay emotionally even, for lack of a better word.
You mentioned also that the full group isn't here, but you've had some impressive results in these first two matches. What's most exciting about just getting the full version of?
Yeah, again, I think in these first couple games, the one thing we said in our last game going into our last preseason game against LA is just how everyone's got to be selfless and work for the team. And in that game, we saw some of our best attacking actions, some of our best defensive actions, and it was a crazy game, the goals that we conceded. But I think we have that as a foundational piece. The way we compete, the way we help each other, the way we put the team first. Those things are, if we can build that and that can be our identity. Now, when you have talented players like Victor coming in, Morgan getting fit, Stein getting fit, Juan Sanabria getting fit, Diego Luna getting fit, and you have that team mentality, I think we can be a top team in the West, And so I think that's what these first two games say to me, and I think it says to the group, and like, again, the competitiveness in training and the sharpness in training, and it's all there. And now we just got to keep getting results whilst these guys are getting back to get these other guys. And in the meantime, these guys that are currently playing are making a case for themselves, right? And I think when you have two players deep in every position that are competing the right way, now you become a real challenger for the West, But if we're just relying on one guy, then we're at the mercy of that guy staying healthy and being in great form all year, which is really difficult.
Having all of those ingredients, how does that energize you as a coach?
It's awesome. I said this at the beginning. Just being involved in the scouting and the way the vision that I had and how it aligned with the vision the club has as to the areas we want to improve upon, and getting those profile players was really important, and that got me excited. But then when they're on the ground and you see their individual qualities, and some of it was on display at the weekend, and now you got 5 of those guys out there. I mean, again, now you're just, amazing things happen. And that's what gets me really excited, is because the only way to articulate tactics in its full form is to have guys that can see plays before they even develop. If not, you're just being reactionary and teams recover. But again, that one-touch pass that Morgan played to Serge, I mean, that's not tactics. That's a vision, and that's quality, and that's the weight of the pass, and that's experience at the highest level. And I think when you get 4 or 5 of those guys on the field thinking the same way, you become a really dynamic team and a difficult team to defend. Yep.
Going off of that, you've got so many young players on the field who are holding their own with these experienced veteran players who have that vision, like you said. What do you think that says about the standards that the academy is setting, that players are able to walk out of the academy and hold their own?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, I've said this numerous times. I think when Jay got here, we were deliberate in the academy setup. Tony Beltran has done an exceptional job over the last few years to really put in place the standards at the academy level that are commensurate with what they'll experience at the first team, and then obviously with Mark and the Monarchs as well. And so I think when you're aligned from a club perspective, and these are the asks, right? It's a non-negotiable. Even if you're an attacking player, the modern game will ask you to understand defending, because it doesn't matter where in the world you go to, everyone is doing it, right? And so I think when you have the alignment and the club-wide standard, then it's a lot easier to progress from one level to the next and understand what the expectations are. I think oftentimes in clubs when the academy is very isolated and not connected to the Monarchs or the second team and then not connected to the first team, it's a lot harder to integrate because every coach is asking something different from those players. But I think our alignment allows them to feel comfortable going from stage to stage.
And then Jason Christ said that this is one of the strongest teams in RSL history. Do you think that that alignment is something that plays a major role in that?
Absolutely. You know, I think, again, I think from a coaching perspective, and you see this throughout the world, where it's like the coach wants to play a certain way, the club has a different vision of how they want to play. You know, the general manager has his favorite type of players, and then you get a bunch of just randomness within an organization. I think when you're aligned top to bottom and you say, these are the areas we were deficient at, this is the way we want to play, these are the players that fit our profile of players that you want, then it's so much easier to recruit. And the other part too is, and I haven't really touched on this, but the character of the players that we're bringing in have made our working environment so rich. Everyone is humble. You know, Morgan, Sanabria, Stein, Lucas Engel. These are amazing human beings that are also very talented. And so when you talk about the big picture from 30,000-foot view as to what an RSL player looks like, is we want talented people, but we also want great people that reflect the club, great people that reflect the community that we live in. And so I think it's all about the alignment.
Hey, Pablo.
Ready?
So when you watch film from Seattle, what are some things you wanted to clean up this week in training, or that you want to see an improvement in Atlanta?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is our ability to get the balls to our pivots, if not for our pivots to create space for other teammates higher up the field. I felt too often Jay Glad was on the ball, our pivots were really stagnant, and we ended up playing east to west around our back line. So what we're working on this week is really the understanding is our pivots should always be side on, so body shape is a big one for that. The next part is am I creating space for me to receive? Right? And I think that's the easiest way to coach for pivots is like always put yourself in a position to receive the ball, right? And so, and obviously they have to work together in a tandem. But if I'm pulling off to receive the ball and this defender comes with me, now Jay Glad has a pass into our 10, as opposed to just holding a position and waiting for Jay to make an action. It's the other way around. The pivots create the action, the guy on the ball interprets the space, right? So that's a big part of it. And why that's important is because we want to also be able to control games with the ball. And in the first two games, there's a lot of transitional moments, and that's going to happen because we're going to be a more vertical team. However, we want to also be really comfortable and really confident in the way we build from the back as well. So it's not like we want to trade the verticality for possession, because it's always a balance. And I just think we have to strike a better balance with our control of the ball and being able to penetrate teams centrally as well as through the widths and behind their back lines.
And then, I don't know if you've even started looking at your opponent yet, but Tata was pretty upset after their loss to San Jose. I expect those players are doing a beep test right now, and they're probably going to be doing it every day this week. He specifically said from the first minute it wasn't good enough. So how do you prepare the guys knowing that they're going to be going up against the team that's going to be pissed off and fighting from the whistle?
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna pose a different challenge. We've been in one home opener, and I think the key to dealing with that is understanding the first 15 minutes are going to be really cagey and really erratic. And so again, we want calm, but we want to be alert. We don't want to be calm and loose. We want to be really sharp, right? And I think and this is something that we come talking about, because for me that really falls into the game management bucket, right? You can manage games at the end with a lead or without a lead, but you also have to manage the early exchanges. And for a team that has had a tough start to the campaign, and now they're opening up their stadium, and like you said, now their coach has been vocal about he wants more from them. We can anticipate a really hungry group. So now we can start talking about what do the 15 minutes look like, and if the ball is bouncing and there's guy running at you, do we want to put our foot on the ball and really calm the game down, or is it the time to just turn them and we now press so that we can get in the game, and we're playing for a bit more territory in the early exchanges, so as to not compromise ourselves by one bad decision that then ends up in a bad result for us. So I think we'll get to that point. We haven't gotten there yet. It's been really focused on our last performance, but starting tomorrow, we'll really start focusing on Atlanta, and that's obviously going to be a touch point given what's happened with Atlanta.
Thank you. And then just last, could you give us a brief update on Ari or any other players?
Yeah. Ari's having surgery, I think, tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. So he had a ruptured Achilles tendon, poor guy. And, I think this was a really important year for him. And the one thing I said to him is like, well, you came in and you did the business and scored a goal before. Now it's about being positive and recovering the right way. But he had a really bright start to the campaign, and then life happens, right? So gutted for the young man, but also proud of how he's taken steps from his first year into the first 2 games of his second year.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
I want to piggyback on what Matty said, and is this test in the road will be a good test to show what the team is really about this year?
Yeah, I think every game's an opportunity to see. I think there's so many levels to this game from a coaching perspective, right? There's the tactical understanding, there's the competitiveness, there's what's the mindset like when things aren't going your way, the emotional control, and then there's also, from a coaching perspective, understanding the relationships of the players on the field, and how do we best put the players on the field that understand each other in a way that gets the most out of not only their performances but the overall team understanding of our game model, right? So I think every game is going to be a challenge. There's no 2 games that are the same, and shame on us if we expect, because we had a good performance against Vancouver, that automatically it's going to happen. It doesn't work like that. Every game is its own event, and the stats that were relevant in the first 2 games have nothing to do with the stats that will take place in this game. We have to affect those moments, right? And so that's why every aspect of team sport is critical. It's not just one isolated moment. And the one thing I can guarantee you is that we'll have a really steely mentality going into this game, understanding, and I think the one thing with this group is no one's taken anything for granted. And I think that's a really powerful place to start from.
Talking about the group, is this group mature enough yet to turn confidence into consistency?
I think we're getting there. How long that takes, I don't know. But I think a performance against, again, the Seattle game for me, why I was emotional is because, again, when you look at up and down their roster, they have national team players everywhere. And they have guys with an average experience in this league of probably 10 years, right? And so when you look at that and you think about our group and how little experience we had, and we're able to compete the right way, we were emotionally stable. So I think the important aspects of winning games are all right there. And so now we're just talking about how do we gain more control? How do we polish up, set pieces that we conceded on? How do we polish up the finishing with 2 1v1s against the goalkeeper to ice the game? How do we, bring those into focus? But I think the ability to turn confidence into consistency, I think, is there, but we'll only know with each passing game.
And the last one is, I wanted to ask you about having Luka Moises starting in the pivot. What's the difference between, I guess we can say, having Pablo too, and what does Luka provide you that maybe Pablo doesn't, and what does Pablo provide you that maybe Luka doesn't?
Yeah, I think Luka, his soccer brain is he's a very intelligent soccer player. I think on both sides of the ball, his awareness of space and time is really, really good. And I think that's what allows him to be so young and playing such one of the most difficult positions in the modern game, because you have defenders 360 degrees around you, and if you don't have good spatial awareness, good peripheral vision, at his age, it's nearly impossible, right? And I think so. His defending in that space is very, very good, even though he maybe isn't physically developed. His positioning is really good. And so with Pablo, I think what he is elite at is facing the game with the ball. And so the trouble with Pablo has been, how do we get him facing the game? And I think that's what we're working with Pablo. The other part, defensively, at times, Pablo is all ball or nothing. And when you go nothing, now we're getting counterattacked the other way. And so his development is understanding, is this a time to win the ball, or is this the time to keep the ball in front of me and make them rotate it to the other side so I can gain my position? And so with Pablo, that's been a 5-year journey, but he's so instinctive that it's at times difficult to change those behaviors because he's so instinctive. I want to go win the ball. And he doesn't realize that there's consequences for the team if you don't, right? So I think those are the biggest differences between the two. And again, now we have Stein into the mix, which will bring a different profile of pivot. So we have some really good options to choose from.
Pablo, qué importante ha sido la victoria para, digamos, confirmar las buenas sensaciones que había de pretemporada y de inicio de temporada.
Sí, yo creo que el resultado fue muy importante para el cuerpo técnico, que estamos haciendo un buen trabajo, pero más importante, que el grupo entiende lo que queremos hacer y demás están haciendo la jugada para marcar la diferencia. Los goles que marcaron fueron cosas que trabajamos, pero claro, al fin el Aiden debe meter el gol y el gozo, la decisión que tomó para pasar el balón versus tirar al arco fue crecimiento para el chico. Y yo creo que para el grupo sigue confirmando que estamos en una trayectoria linda y que, como siempre, hay que seguir trabajando. Pero el resultado nos da un poco de respiro para seguir trabajando durante la semana.
Y esto faltándote 5 o 6 piezas, digamos, jugadores que en teoría deben ser importantes, ¿no?
Sí.
Bendito problema vas a tener, me imagino.
Oh, claro, pero esos son problemas, como dicen, son problemas lindos, ¿no? Porque ahora tenemos... Pero mientras tanto, estos jugadores están demostrando que pueden jugar en este nivel, que pueden marcar la diferencia. Ahora, cuando hay competición dentro del grupo, yo creo que ese es el próximo paso para el equipo.
¿Y para Atlanta, cómo lo planteas?
Mira, yo creo que vamos a seguir con la mayoría de los mismos jugadores, porque después de un resultado lindo es difícil hacer muchos cambios. A mejor tenemos que hacer un cambio porque el Artie no está lesionado. A mejor hacemos 2. Tenemos que averiguar cómo están los jugadores nuevos de la tema física. Pero la mayoría del grupo, me imagino, va a ser lo mismo del último partido, y cuando empiezan a llegar los jugadores que están lesionados, los vamos a integrar poco a poco para darle el mejor chance para el éxito.
La última cosa, vi que estaban trabajando muchos balones, digamos, jugadas a balón parado, tipo córner, etcétera. ¿Eso te está ahora mismo preocupando?
No, solamente...
El gol encajado.
Sí, no, mira, conseguimos un gol en contra el fin de semana en un tiro de esquina. Eso fue una comunicación que lo hicieron los jugadores dentro de ellos y se confundieron en esa jugada. Siempre le queremos dar la libertad de ajustar posiciones si ven algo distinto de que preparamos. Pero para mí, si ve el partido de Arsenal-Chelsea, marcaron 3 goles los equipos y los 3 goles de tiro libre.
Son los 2 mejores equipos.
Y son los 2 mejores equipos. Es una cosa que queremos seguir trabajando. Sabemos que es una fase muy importante del fútbol, y lo más que trabajamos, para mí, me imagino que se van a sentir más cómodos, porque al fin de semana habían 10 tiros de esquina en contra, 6 tiros libres de los costados y 4 tiros de la banda. Y defendimos 19 y nos hicieron un gol. O sea, estamos ahí, pero también queremos trabajar la tema ofensiva también, porque es una gran oportunidad de hacer goles.
Gracias.
No.
You can't really control an outcome. From your perspective, what are the controllables you put into play to encourage an outcome?
I think it's all process. I think it's Monday through Friday. I think it's clear understanding. I think it's, again, I go back to psychological safety. Am I allowed to express myself in the best way possible in this moment, right? And then it's clear game model as a collective. Are we thinking as a collective in these different moments of the game, right? And so I think you start with that. You have your processes to get to that Monday through Friday, and then it's the psychological safety where I know that I can play as free as I can make as many mistakes as long as I have great reactions to the mistakes I make. And I think if you take those three, that's how you best influence results. Because at the end of the team, there's another group of 11 guys that are trying to do the same thing, right? With great players, great coaches. And so I think that's why we spend so much time on ourselves. We focus on our opponents at the end of the week, but it's always this whole season is going to be a journey of understanding who you are. And I always say, and you've read it a million times, if you don't know who you are, it doesn't matter who anyone else is, right? If you don't know who you are and what you're trying to achieve, what everyone else is doing is relevant.
Well, then you also speak frequently about mentality, like on the field. What is your approach for these young guys? Like, how are you communicating to them about mentality?
Yeah. Well, again, I think, like I said, I think the most important thing for young players is to feel psychologically safe. I know I'm going into like some crazy psychology stuff, but again, I think young players that don't feel safe will never feel comfortable to express themselves to look good enough to actually earn a spot, right? If I'm saying, I need you to do what Diego Luna does, that doesn't help the young man believe in himself, right? And so I think a big part of with the young guys is, listen, you're going to make mistakes, and I say it up front. You're going to make a mistake. What's your reaction to the mistake is the most important thing. And then how is the next decision affected by what happened previously? And that's a process. That's not going to happen in one game. You're not going to get these guys in 2 games, 3 guys up to snuff. But the more they feel comfortable being able to express themselves, like we talked about Aiden today doing that trick on the line, he's done that in preseason games and has killed it, And so Luka Moisa and I say to Luka, I say, listen, you're a pivot. I want you to receive the ball in tough positions. I want you to lose the ball. But if you're not willing to put yourself in that position, you'll never be an elite midfielder, right? And so again, encouraging guys to be in difficult situations, whether or not it comes off, as long as you have good reactions, you're helping our team maintain our game state, right? Versus just like throwing your hands up or walking, and that you won't see with any of these young guys. And so I think a big part, and we talked about it earlier, is how they've grown up in the academy and now coming to the first team, having that ability to express themselves. And then the last part is, it's not just me and the coaches, it's really the Lucas Engels, the Jay Glads, the Hoffas, and Noel Caliskins around them, DeAndre, that makes these guys feel comfortable to continue to improve.
Right on, man. Thank you.
Just one from me. You've had 2 games, new tactics, new adjustments going live. What surprised you that's really gone well, and what are you trying to improve on moving forward?
Yep. So I'd say the biggest thing is our ability to be solid defensively. I thought our box defending was really good in the first 2 games. I think the goal that we conceded in Vancouver was almost flukish. We had great numbers behind the ball. It deflects off some guy, and the guy put it in the only spot he could have. And so I think we're minimizing the big chances. Although Hoffa did a great job last game making some big saves, right? So I'd say defensively, the understanding and the compactness, and my conversation with all the guys has been like, we feel really good defending in a block. Where last year I thought at times we got anxious and would run out of positions. So I'd say defending first and foremost has been really good. The second part of that is, whilst we want to be more vertical, it can't be our only option, right? So it goes back to, how do we utilize our pivots? How are our pivots more involved in our build to give us more control, whether we want to go, whether it's to play in, to play back out, to play back in, or whether it's the second goal where Philip plays over the top. We want that option all the time. But now how are we mixing that up to make it difficult for our teams to scout for us? And so I think that's the next phase of what we need to improve upon, because in our last game, our 10s didn't get on the ball nearly as much as they did in the first game. And so now the best way to get your 10s on the ball is to get your pivots on the ball. So it's a knockdown effect. But again, we've been deliberate the last 2 days. I hope to see a marked improvement on that against Atlanta.